I'd like to formally welcome you all to the Eurolis seminar for 2021, the Post-Pandemic Panacea. We're looking at the role of libraries and their initiatives and the impact on the younger generation, who of course have had a huge impact with the COVID-19 epidemic, with their progression through education, through social contact, the whole works really. So that's our focus. Pleased to see still people arriving. So I'm going to ask now Gosha Kabaj from the Goethe Institute to start my short introduction from her screen. Gosha, could you put up the Zoom? Okay, so we thought we'd just say a few words about what Eurolis is. For some, you have already experienced their seminars, perhaps in the past. But we are a group, it's an informal network of librarians from the European cultural centres working with SILIP in the UK, in particular with the International Library Group. And you can see the list there. We have 6 countries currently represented, and that's not an exclusive list. We continue to try to add to that from other countries in Europe. And as you can see, within the UK, we enjoy the collaboration with SILIP and with Boroughs in Westminster. Thank you, Gosha. Yeah. So what do we do? Well, essentially, we work together to promote European languages in the UK. And how do we do that? The next screen, please. How do we do that? Well, first of all, and the next, we do these international seminars. And as you can see, quite a list of topics over the years are listed there. Last year was our first online seminar on how can libraries play a positive role in a crisis. And it was so successful, and we were very pleased to have Isabel Hunter from Libraries Connected chairing. She was fantastic, and I think that subject was given a very good airplay. So next screen, please, Gosha. The Euro Toolbox is something you may not be familiar with, but it is a free commodity. We put this collection together every year. It's free to all UK libraries, in schools, public libraries, anywhere. And as you can see from the screen, includes all those languages. And we're very much helped by SILIP in the UK, who donate a complete copy of the shortlist for the Carnegie Greenaway Awards to that. There's a contact there which you can pick up online afterwards anyway, because all of these presentations will be available on our WordPress site. Mariella is our coordinator in the Italian Cultural Institute. This is Fred the Fox, who accompanies the collection, and we encourage him to be used in the settings as he goes around the country. Thank you, Gosha. Study tours, unfortunately, not happening currently at the moment for obvious reasons, and haven't done for a while, but it is something we maintain that we would like to include in the future when things are better. We work with, as you can see, you know, a wide range of organisations, any library in the UK, and those international libraries that you can see listed there. And very importantly, IBI, the International Board on Books for Young People. We've had good relationships with them. Thank you, Gosha. If we could move to the next screen. If you want to see and read more information about Eurolis, you can go to the website is a WordPress site, the address there. We have Facebook and Twitter, as you can see, the address is there. And our members, as you can see, are listed below and come from all those 6 cultural institutes. We're very pleased. We have Gosha Kabaj operating today, as we're very grateful for the Goethe Institute to host this seminar. Thank you, Gosha. So we're now going to move to the subject of the day, the real topic. And as I've said already, it's about post-pandemic panaceas. And we're very, very fortunate and grateful to have as our chairperson somebody who's worked in public libraries for most of her life, and I think started as a very library assistant at a base level, working in Yorkshire, and now has risen to be Chief Librarian at Kirklees Libraries, and is the president of Libraries Connected. And I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce Carol Stump. Please, would you come into the tent, as we say?
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. And I too am really privileged to be invited to speak and to chair the meeting. In a moment, I'm going to share my screen and hope all goes well and do my presentation. And then I'll be followed by Leonie, who's going to also do a presentation. I'll introduce her later. If you have any comments, can I ask that you put them in the chat? And we'd be delighted to look at those comments. If you have any particular questions, could you please use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen? So they're next to each other. One is chat and one is Q&A. I'm now going to try and share my screen, and hopefully that will work. Just bear with me. What I can't now see is how to do the slideshow from the beginning. So yeah, it's hidden now by the oh, wait a minute, if I just move that, just bear with me, I will be with you in a second. Slideshow from beginning. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, I'm really delighted to be here today. The subject of the seminars is really close to my heart. That's how libraries help children and young people. And it's something that Libraries Connected have really been thinking about both during the pandemic and obviously as we come out of the pandemic. As John said, I'm the Chief Librarian at Kirklees Libraries, and also we too have been really thinking about that, and I'm sure you've joined us today because that has been on your mind. So I am going to talk about the impact of libraries and young people. I think it's really important that we think about this. Libraries play a key role in supporting families and delivering a range of benefits that improve lives beyond supporting literacy and access to free books. As we know, libraries are safe spaces, easily accessible and welcoming to everyone. Public libraries welcome children from the very earliest months of life, helping parents and carers to support them as they grow and learn. Working with schools and other partners, libraries provide a range of activities, programmes and initiatives which introduce, extend and refresh the library experience for children. Every childhood involves periods of change and upheaval, and this can be handled smoothly, but often involves transitions that are disruptive or at worst traumatic. Having places which offer continuity and support through these periods can be instrumental in sustaining achievement or absorbing that stress. So the child who sees the library as a natural habitat has such a place at hand. So one of our offers for Libraries Connected is called the Children's Promise, and the Children's Promise developed with the Association of Senior Children's and Educational Librarians, otherwise known as ASCL, as part of our universal library offers. And it ensures that children are actively involved in decisions about the services that affect them, as well as being offered opportunities to volunteer. Their goal is that every child and young person in libraries is inspired to read for pleasure, has access to a diverse range of materials, can engage in a variety of digital activities, and can take part in activities that improve their well-being. Public libraries welcome children from the very earliest months of life, helping parents and carers to support their child as they grow and learn. Libraries do this by supporting the development of children's early learning and cultural development, children's speaking and listening and early literacy, children's social and emotional skills, parent and child bonding, and school-ready children. The impact of early intervention is immeasurable. Preschool children learn social and verbal skills during library events, as well as literacy and numeracy skills from book sharing and song and rhyme times. Key educational transition points are good times to offer interactions. These can be worrying for children, and the library can provide a safe and familiar atmosphere. The Summer Reading Challenge is a great way to encourage children of school age to continue to visit our libraries. Using the challenge as a hook, we stage fun activities in all our libraries, which breaks down those barriers. Libraries are where children discover what books they like best and become lifelong readers. I want to talk about rhyme times in libraries, which has become very popular. And I'm going to start by a case study. And this case study is from Kamal Brown and Lindsay McFarlane of London Borough of Sutton. Sutton's libraries support parents and carers by providing a range of literacy activities, such as story time for preschool children, Summer Reading Challenge and Book Start. Before lockdown, attendance at rhyme time had increased so much that health and safety became a concern and a booking system was introduced. They also began to increase capacity for the number of sessions they could deliver by introducing rhyme time volunteers. During lockdown, so March 2020 to March 2021, their digital rhyme times at Sutton libraries had nearly 20,000 views. Since April 2021, they have delivered 49 outside rhyme times, reached 641 families, been supported by 28 volunteer hours. This simple but very effective intervention, outside rhyme times, demonstrates how they are meeting the needs of families in Sutton. They offer families who have been denied social experiences in safe spaces to develop confidence outside the home. And just a couple of quotes. From a parent, these sessions mean so much and we feel safe, thank you. And from a volunteer, I am so glad to be getting outside and I get so much enjoyment. So library rhyme times help to build relationships between children and their parents and can have a positive impact on a mother's mental health. Research has shown that 1 in 5 mothers of children aged 3 years or under suffer from mental health difficulties. First-time mums are most likely to suffer in silence. This has significant risks for children, which include cognitive, developmental, and language delay, and increased risk of mood disorders. An unhappy, unresponsive adult carer limits a baby's ability to develop their social and emotional capabilities. A study of the impact of rhyme times on the mental health of mothers was carried out in Essex libraries in 2017. Analysis of the results revealed a very noticeable improvement in mothers' mood immediately after the rhyme time, with the percentage describing themselves as very happy more than doubling from 25% to 59% in the space of 30 minutes. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about cultural activities for children and families. For parents and carers, libraries provide opportunities to meet other families and enable them to develop new friendships, reducing social isolation and supporting mental health and well-being. Sharing stories with young children helps to develop their speech, language, and early literacy skills, encourages word association, and helps them to learn about the world in which they live. Children with language difficulties at age 5 are 4 times more likely to have reading difficulties in adulthood, 3 times more likely to have mental health problems, and twice as likely to be unemployed when they reach adulthood. Library activities that introduce children to music, dance, theatre, arts and crafts, and encourage play support the development of speech and language, listening skills, and social interaction with other children. And for some children, these activities in our libraries may be their first cultural experience. And another case study, and this time it's from Elizabeth MacDonald of Wokingham Borough Libraries. In 2020, Elizabeth worked in partnership with the Town Council and More Arts to deliver an Authors into Schools programme before their annual Children's Book Festival in October. The Authors into Schools programme involved her running multiple online sessions in schools with authors from all over the country, reaching and engaging with large numbers of children over several days. The technical and logistical challenges of this were immense, and she worked out how to run the sessions on Microsoft Teams and Crowdcast by herself. There were 18 author events for different year groups. In total, 41 schools from across the borough took part in the author sessions, with 12,000 young people watching and interacting with the authors. These talks also helped to promote the Children's Book Festival, also run in partnership with Wokingham Town Council, which ran virtually over one weekend in October and introduced an ethnically diverse selection of authors to children all over the borough. She was able to deliver 8 author sessions with 650 tickets sold and 1,300 families interacting with the sessions. She's also commissioned and run virtual activities during all the holiday periods, including a variety of crafts and other creative activities. Elizabeth has worked during the lockdown period since March 2020 to provide a fantastic virtual service for children and families in our borough. And next, let's move on to some of the national initiatives. So Book Trust Storytime. Bookstart is a national free book gifting programme by book trusts that can be accessed through libraries and encourages families to share books, stories and rhyme times as early as possible. Leading library partners have come together to support the development of Book Trust Storytime, a new pilot national library experience aimed at supporting disadvantaged families with young children to engage with their local library and develop an ongoing reading habit. Post-COVID, we also hope that Book Trust Storytime pilot will align with libraries' aspirations to reconnect with their local communities after a year of closure and kickstart more visits to library spaces. As well as supporting disadvantaged children and families, the pilot has also been designed to break down any limiting preconceptions, such as libraries only being a place to read books quietly. And we know that that's not true. We learned that families are more likely to return to the library if they have a positive, fun first experience and can see their child enjoying and benefiting from their visit. The Book Trust Storytime experience will include their existing Storytime prize, which celebrates the best early years children's books. A raft of resources for librarians will be tested alongside activities for families that bring the magic of reading to life and inspire families to make sharing stories and visiting their local library a regular and long-lasting part of family life. And just to touch on Empathy Day. So Empathy Day was particularly relevant this year with the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter protests, highlighting the need for more empathy. We take part every year and understand that libraries play a crucial role in teaching children about empathy. Empathy Day comes at a time when there are so many uncertainties, and recent events make it even more important to talk about putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Empathy Day is an innovative programme that helps us deliver on national and local priorities. We believe it is core to the values that libraries should be representing and promoting. And a quote here from Cressida Cowell, our Children's Laureate. Empathy is a vital skill, and books are the best and most fun way to learn it. So let's talk about renewing our services for young children post-pandemic. There are many challenges. Public libraries still face some of the same challenges that we had before lockdown, including access to and effective communication with local schools, lack of central local government's recognition of how libraries can support children's reading. Added to this, we had a confusing, changing day-by-day picture in each school and community, with fear playing a part in many people's lives, with some communities feeling victimised or blamed for the spread of the virus. So this should be a time when we remove the last of the financial barriers to library use. For example, fines, fees for services. But for many authorities post-COVID, their financial position makes this more difficult. We've identified some priority areas for action. So encouraging children and young people back into libraries. Libraries Connect and Marketing the Library project is working with 2 networks of libraries to support this. Outreach work is currently a challenge, and we know that digital only reaches a proportion of the community. Developing flexible models for group visits to libraries to reduce the risk of late cancellations, using this as a reason to explore other ways to deliver library visits for groups of children and young people will be key. We will create an online digital cultural offer that sits next to and enhances our physical offer. So, for example, our child and adolescent mental health services have seen attendance increase in their young adult groups when these moved online. Another case study. So this is Sean Doyle from North Yorkshire Libraries. I met Sean at a recent seminar, and he is so full of enthusiasm and such a young and vibrant addition to the library service in North Yorkshire. So Sean joined the library service as a young volunteer before securing a job as a library assistant. North Yorkshire Libraries has now established a young adult library team with youth engagement as its focus. And the team is made up of younger members of library staff, none of whom has a management role. It has made recommendations contributing to stock policy, promotion strategies, and new services aimed at young people, and particularly around supporting their mental health. Sean felt that the service needs to do more to reach out to young LGBTQ people, many of whom live in rural areas and may feel isolated. He sought out best practice from elsewhere and persuaded a young writer at York University to volunteer her time to run an LGBT writing workshop. Amongst its other achievements, the team has produced an extensive report evaluating the needs of young people, advised on and co-created self-care toolboxes for youth-initiated virtual clubs, delivered various writing competitions, so LGBT+, mental health, competition in the new year, and established and manages an Instagram presence for the service at North Yorkshire Libraries-Youth. Established in April 2020, the Young Adults Libraries team is a force for good within the service and has set its own goal. And that is to use our skills, resources and capabilities to improve the lives of young people within and beyond our libraries. And finally, I would like to finish on something that's really dear to my heart and part of my own service. And it's called the Being All I Can Be project, run by Kirklees Libraries. So this project targets young people on the point of being excluded from school, at risk of being drawn into gangs or identified as vulnerable. They work in a library with a performance poet or hip hop artist and librarian to develop their own voices. They then record their work in a professional studio and work with an artist to illustrate their written work in a published booklet. We have worked with over 180 young people from a pupil referral unit, 3 primary schools, 10 secondary schools, 2 groups of young carers and 2 youth groups. And we recently adapted the project to allow the young people to complete a Bronze Arts Award. And a teacher said, giving the young people a voice is vital in all that we do. And over the past few weeks, they've shown they have a powerful voice. Excuse me. I'm now going to click on the video link. Fingers crossed that this works. Okay, so it seems that, can you hear me? It seems that you're not seeing the video. So I think what I will do is I will make sure that that gets sent out. Can I just check that you're hearing me still, even though you're not seeing the video?
We can still hear you, Carol.
Okay, so I think I'll just make sure. I had a feeling that it's always a bit of a risk when you do try and share a video that it doesn't work. So I am going to try and stop sharing my screen because that was the end of my presentation. And I'm really sorry you didn't get to see that video because it's a lovely rap piece of music. Now, some of you might not like rap, so we've probably saved some of you from a horror that you probably didn't want. But the video will be sent out with the presentation. Okay, so thank you for listening, and I'm just going to check whether there are any questions or any comments. Yeah, sorry, I think yes, obviously some of you didn't see the video, so that's in the comments. I haven't got any questions. I don't know whether anybody wants to come in and ask me anything. I can't actually see everybody, so if anybody does want to come in a question, if you could turn off your video. Thomas, you've raised your hand. Are we able to bring Thomas in? Are we able to bring Thomas in to ask a question?
Yeah, hang on, wait a minute.
Thank you.
While we're waiting, Carol, this is John Lake. Just remind everybody in the seminar, if you weren't aware, do use the Q&A to pose any questions that you'd like to make. And we'll pick that up and direct Carol towards that. So please do.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
So Thomas is here now. So Thomas, you may start.
Hello, Thomas. Welcome. Thomas, we can't hear you or see you. Thomas, are you able to ask your question?
Yeah.
Lovely. Nice to see you.
Just if you could talk a little bit about, you may be able to expand the services people with young people with mental health.
Yes.
Are you know, that's an area that's obviously quite big. It's going to be quite big in the next couple of years, and I'd just maybe like to hear a little more about it.
Yes, so I think nationally across Lives Connected in England, in particular, that I can talk about that there are lots of really interesting things happening. We do understand that that children have suffered during lockdown, and that they have found that they're lonely or that they have anxiety and many issues. And so we are really thinking about our services. We're working with the Reading Agency to produce some books that could help us support that. In a lot of areas, we're working with the public health team, with social prescribers, thinking about what events and activities we could put on for children. So we're really thinking about what book collections we've got, how we can encourage children into libraries. I haven't got all the answers. It's very early days thinking about the post-pandemic, what kind of things we can put on. So what events and activities would really help children, how we can reach out to those children working with schools, for example. we're starting to think about our class visits to introduce children back into our libraries to promote our book collections and our activities. So it's really important that we work with schools, that we work with mental health charities. We're working, for one example, in Kirklees, we work closely with people like theatre companies, thinking about what can we put on to encourage young children. So I think for me, the main thing that we can do is think about who is out there, who are our partners, and who we can engage with. What support we can get from, example, people who work in the community, who can signpost people to our libraries. So, for example, I've been working with a team of community workers who go out to talk to families who are most in need, working with the most vulnerable. We have a charity called Home Start, and we work with them. And it's kind of co-producing what we might put on in libraries to make sure that we're helping the children there. Have you thought about that at all, Thomas?
Beg your pardon?
Have you thought about that at all as well?
Yeah, well, obviously, I was just listening to you, what you were saying, and there were, obviously, triggered little electronic reactions in the brains. I think it is. That's what the neuro people talk it. One of the things that we're pretty much only starting out again. But one of the comments that I did hear, it's quite difficult sometimes to make the right connections with this, particularly the secondary schools.
Yes.
Because they're tied up with I'm sure lots of them are very worried now about their GCSE standards, because they are going to drop. But I think their main focus is trying to make sure they don't drop too far, to
yes,
render them sort of unpopular with parents. But the other point that was always a challenge with getting young, certainly teenagers, into libraries, and everyone knows this, competing with social media, competing with devices.
yes.
And, I mean, I often wonder, you go into school libraries particularly, and we are fortunate enough here in Camden as well, and that we have well-stocked children's libraries. But, you ask yourself, how much do they get used compared to, say, 10 years ago even?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure, teachers, I'm sure, are tearing their hair out because, the art of reading, or the art of reading for pleasure, is gone, is in trouble anyway, but
yes.
I'm sure it's a work in progress. Yeah.
It is, and I think there are many competitions out there for our children's attention. And I don't know whether anybody else has found this, and it'd be really useful if anybody wants to just add a comment or come in, that actually the younger people have engaged more online with our online activities. So, for example, in my authority, we put on some children's author events and some activities online, and we found we've got a bigger audience there, because obviously that's the way children like to interact. So I think there's many different routes, and I think as well, we work closely with the Association for School and Children's Libraries, and it's really important that we still shout about how important school libraries are, and that investment in school libraries is really important. So I think there's many different things that we should be doing, and shouting really loudly about. But one of the other things that's just come to my mind is that we've actually started recruiting younger people into our service, which I don't know about other countries and other authorities. It's been hard to do that, to attract younger people, but we've started with apprenticeships now. And I think sometimes having those people that are young can also be a really good way of getting other younger people engaged, because they speak the language, if you like, and they're able to interact more, and they know what young people want, much more than someone like me knows what young people want. So I think that's another another way of trying to attract children, definitely. Thank you, Thomas. Have you any other thoughts, or have we any other questions?
Carol,
So we've got to.
No,
Yeah.
no, thank you. No, thank you, Dave. It's fine. You've dealt with it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, sorry, John. Yeah, we have another question. Just wondering how others are making sure they're working with schools without taking on too much of the literacy role. These times seem to challenge the traditionally drawn boundaries between our services. Yes, I think that's a problem, Laura, that I think we're all struggling with. You know, we have just such great competition, don't we, for our resources. I'd be really interested to hear if anyone else is also thinking about that. And if you did want to come in and think, Laura, there's no pressure, but if you did want to come in and think about what you were thinking around this and what measures you've put in place, or if anybody would like to come in, that would be really really useful. I think it's budgets as well that we worry about, isn't it? And you know, we can't get too involved in some of the things that the schools should be doing, but we want to be there to support them. So it's definitely partnership working, isn't it? And how we do that. We've got another. Laura doesn't have audio. If there's any comment you want to type, then that would be really useful, Laura. And if anybody else wants to make any comments around that subject, it is something that I'm sure is taxing us all. We have a few more minutes for questions and answers and comments.
Carol, may I just ask you a question, if I
Yes.
may? Because I really enjoyed your coverage of, you know, the services as they stand throughout the UK, and in particular, I mean, it was lovely to see that Book Start is an enduring gifting program which has been going for so long. But out of all those things, cultural activities and Rhyme Time, Book Start and Empathy Day, I thought was very interesting too. But out of all of them, what do you find attracts people most to get over that hill of, well, shall I go back to the library with my child? Are you aiming at the adult and the child at the same time, or are people doing that in order to try and re-engage?
Yes, it's been really difficult, and we are still working on coming out of that pandemic period, because it's taken a while to persuade people that our libraries are safe. So one of the things that we really noticed was when we first opened, and I get lost in when lockdown lifted and then went back into lockdown and lifted again, was that people were very slow to come back. We also had some comments that the fact that we were all socially distancing, and obviously there was quite a lot of barriers put up, you know, please be 2 meters apart and all that kind of thing. And I think that did put mothers and fathers and young children off coming into our libraries. What we tried to do throughout the pandemic was keep engaged with those people. So we made a lot of calls to our users, phone calls, as our library staff went home and took laptops home. We made a lot of phone calls to people who obviously couldn't come and visit us because our buildings were shut. And so we asked what people wanted, and a lot of people just wanted something to do with their, in particular, younger children. I think, John, was where we focused our attention. Some mothers at home in danger of being isolated, you know, wanting some activity, and we put a lot of things online, such as rhyme times, story times, you know, children's activities, theatre shows, that kind of thing. And then as lockdown lifted, we've had to start to think about how do we then encourage people back, and that is happening. And we do now have our rhyme times and story times back in a lot of places. And I think when I talked to a lot of heads of services throughout the United Kingdom, everybody's at different stages. So some people are doing it more slowly. Some have just opened up their doors and said, come in. And where we have opened up our doors, we are finding that the the younger children, the story times, the rhyme times are really what people want, and we're having to think about those social distancing measures. I think we've just started re-engaging with the older children, with schools, thinking about how we do class visits in a safe manner. And I think that we've also started to think about how do we engage with our teens. So for example, I don't know if people are aware of what manga is, but we run a manga club, which is really well run, well received by the teenage audience. So I think it's just about, we want to engage with everybody from cradle to grave, don't we? I think we started off with our younger people and our younger families, because I think that they have really missed us. They've really, really missed us. And then of course, I think we have to think about help with homework. So the question that, or the comment that Laura put in the chat, I thought was really interesting, because we can help and support. We shouldn't be taking over the role of the schools, but if we can support by getting back our homework clubs, the access to the internet, the free access is really important. We know that in some deprived areas, people don't have laptops. One of the things that we found out during lockdown was that actually there could be families of 4 or 5 children sharing one laptop. And so as soon as we opened our doors, we found that the children in some of those more deprived areas were coming back to use our IT. And that's something that we must try and keep hold of and try and promote and help. So really the answer to your question, John, is we're looking at all ages, from young to old, but we did concentrate in the initial period on the younger families.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you.
Thank
Carol,
you.
there is a question from Gracia Ramos. Sorry if I'm pronounced that correctly. I think it's aimed at Eurolis particularly, saying, just curious, but are Jersey schools aware of your services? But I will interact with Gracia on the chat so that we can sort that one out.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to say that Jersey libraries are part of Libraries Connected, and we work really well with Jersey, and they contribute a real vast amount of skills and knowledge to our to support us, and they actually, it was really interesting to follow their how they were coming out of the pandemic, because they came out a little bit earlier. So they really did support us, actually, Jersey Libraries, with our post-pandemic risk assessments, for example, and just our thinking, really. So we do, as libraries, we do interact with them, but I'll let you pick that up, John. Thank you. I think just before we move on, are there any more questions, comments? If not, I am going to, oh, there is a comment there. One of the things we found, thank you, Andrew. One of the things we found across the North West ASCL group, that's the Association of Schools and Children's Libraries, there was a lot of pent-up demand for story time and rhyme times. Of course, nothing has been easy about the last 18 months, but as soon as lockdown restrictions started to lift, these were the sessions that got back on track most quickly. So I think that's just kind of confirming, Andrew, isn't it, what I said? Andrew, if you want to come in, put your hand up. If you don't, if that's fine, that would be fine. But if you wanted to enlarge on that, it is a really interesting topic, isn't it, about how as soon as lockdown restrictions lifted, people couldn't wait to get back. Thank you for that.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Andrew. Yes, we can.
Hello. Yes, no, sorry. I really just, yes, confirming what you were saying. I mean, I don't have much to add to that. It was just an observation, really.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so thank you for that discussion. That was really interesting. I think we're all sharing the same thoughts as we come out of the pandemic. And so it will be really interesting to move on to our next speaker now, who is Leonie Hintz, who's head of libraries at the, I hope I'm going to pronounce this right, Leonie told me how to pronounce it, Uscherhallen in Barmbek in Hamburg, so the book hall. Following her studies of library information sciences at the Stuttgart Media University between 2006 and 2009, Leonie Hintz spent 1 year at the library of the German House in the City International University of Paris. After completing a master's degree in Information and Documentation Sciences at the University of Paris 8 and in Cultural and Media Management at the University for Music and Theatre in Hamburg, she became head of libraries at the Book Hall in Barmbek, a branch of the public library system in Hamburg. Leonie is going to talk to us today about how they reacted to the closure, about finding digital ways of delivering the service, and what the pandemic means for young audiences today. So I'm going to invite Leonie to speak and share her screen. Thank you, Leonie.
Yes, thank you, Carol, for your introduction. Can you hear me? Is everything okay?
We
Yes,
can.
nodding. Okay, so hello from Hamburg to everyone. I'm excited to be here this evening and to share our experiences with you. I'm going to share my screen. I hope this is going to work. If not, please just tell me. So first, I want to tell you something about the Bücherhalle in Hamburg, which is actually the public library system in Hamburg, northern Germany. We have 33 branches all over the city, and I am a head of library for 2 of these branches. One smaller one specialized on families with a large children's book section, and a bigger one with a wider range of media items and events. They are quite close to each other. You can see them on the map. Normally, our libraries are very open and very welcoming space for everyone. Well, you know how libraries work. Apart from providing books, movies, audiobooks, and more for the community, we have a lot of events in our case, especially for children. The things like picture book cinemas, class visits, story time, those are the usual things we offer, but we have more particular things like our Coder Dojo, a programming club for children. You can see the numbers of the events we had in 2019, so the last year before COVID-19 hit us. And of course, we have also reading and study areas, which are very important for our community. We have an IT infrastructure that we offer to them, including free computer access and, of course, free Wi-Fi. So this was our library world in Hamburg. And then came March 2020, and there was shut down. And the libraries were closed. We were closed for 5 weeks in spring 2020, which was an absolute surreal experience. I never expected anything like this to happen, but I guess we are all on the same page with this. The most crucial question for us was, is there anything we could still offer for our community? Because we are a public library, and to be there for our community is our raison d'être. And even more important for us was not only we were closed, but also schools and kindergartens were closed. So there was nothing going on anymore for children. And no one knew at this moment what was going to happen next. No one knew how teachers would deal with this strange situation, and we wondered, is there anything we could do, especially because the final exams for the older students were due in May, so they were locked out from a normal school system, and they were locked out from information in the library. And yes, it was quite difficult to imagine how this could turn out in the end. So we got in touch with the school authority and tried to figure out with them what part we could play in this. How can we support pupils and teachers in this challenging time? No one was prepared for a situation like this. So the first ideas we had during the library closure were quite simple. We offered an online reference desk for pupils via email. This was installed only 1 or 2 weeks after the lockdown. And also we provided supporting materials for the teachers from our libraries. And another thing that was offered not only to schools, teachers and pupils, but to everyone in the city was a free library card that could be used for our online services. That means our ebooks, online magazines, newspapers, and also online databases. This was free for the whole time of the library closure, and it was very easy to access. They just sent us an email with basic data, and I think it was more like 10,000 free library cards we gave away during this period. So this was the library closure, and fortunately it didn't take so long, and after 5 weeks we reopened the libraries. When we did, the libraries looked like this. Closed rooms, locked seats. We also had some protective glass added to the information and service desks, so we were hidden behind those. We were back, but not really a welcoming space anymore. You see, there are no seats on the working areas, study areas anymore. So this was all banned. And it felt actually more like a supermarket instead of a library. You just go in, you grab your books, movies, or whatever you wanted to take with you, and then leave, preferably in under 15 minutes, because there was only a limited number of people allowed in the library at the same time. We, the staff, were, like I already said, more or less hidden behind this protective glass desks. And of course, we were there and answered questions, but especially in the beginning, we avoided to accompany the readers to the shelves or anything like this for safety reasons. It was still the time when the things were not sure how we needed to protect each other in the correct way. And under these conditions, we knew it would be impossible to offer events or real support for children, young people, well, basically anyone, so on site. So we started to think about ways and means to do this, maybe online. This was an absolutely new way of thinking for us, because we always said everything that has to do with the library should happen in the library. They should know the space, they should have this library feeling, they should feel at home in our libraries. But we were going online, and luckily this was not only new for us, but for everyone else, like schools, kindergartens, and others. We focused in the beginning upon these institutions because it is, as always, the easiest way for us to get in touch with children. I'm going to present you two different audiences we try to reach with our online events, and explain a little bit what was going on and how we did this. The first one is our online research training for schools, which we did via Zoom. We started with this offer because it was the most obvious one in our opinion. We already had online databases in our library portfolio that could be used not only in the library, which wasn't possible at the moment, but also remotely. For the older students, like 15 to 18 years old, this would be a valuable addition when they were going to prepare papers for school or presentation for their final exams, which were due in May, as I already told you. Normally, we do explain those databases during our library, our information literacy classes in the libraries. So the question was, how could we use the online resources we already have and our expertise in information literacy and take it into a digital format? In a small group of 3 colleagues, we started to gather information on how to do an online training course. To this point, we had all participated at some point in meetings via Zoom or Skype, but creating something on our own was completely different. Ideally, we thought it should be not only informative, there should be also some exercises and also some interaction between the class and us. So we took our time, and over the summer holidays, we developed from this vague idea a modular system with 5 of our online databases and created worksheets to be used during the training course. This took us some time because we never have done something like this before, and we looked into different tools we could use, and in the end we decided to use Zoom because it was used in some of the schools already, and it had all the features we needed. So our idea was to be present in a classroom via an interactive whiteboard and with computers accessible for the pupils to do the exercises. So the students are in the classroom, we're in the library, and we're still doing this online event together. So we have this nice little concept, but still no idea whether it would work or not. So we asked some of our colleagues to be our pupils for a session so we can get a close to reality experience and also some feedback. After this went quite well, we started to look for some real classes, which wasn't so easy after the summer holidays because in the beginning there was still a lot going on due to the pandemic. They have to find the way to teach the students in a new way. But we found a courageous teacher who agreed to give it a try. So after a brief discussion about the contents, so what online database would be suitable for the class, we started the technical rehearsals. In the end, we needed 3 of them for this first group. As I said earlier, not only we were new to digital formats, so were the schools. It became part of our booking process for the online research trainings to do those technical rehearsals. We encountered very interesting and very different problems over the next few months. The most common one was a weak Wi-Fi signal in the school because, well, not every school had a Wi-Fi before, and I don't know how it is in other countries in Europe, but in Germany we are a bit late with a few things when it comes to digital things in schools. But my favorite problem was actually this one time when the person in charge of the IT system in the school decided to block the use of Zoom on school grounds for data privacy reasons. just after we did the technical rehearsal with the teacher, without telling the teacher. And of course, when we had our online research training a few days later, nothing worked and we had to reschedule and find a new tool in the end. So it was really interesting to see how we could discover this new way of learning together. But back to the first real training we had, I have to admit we were really nervous, but it went quite well and we got helpful feedback from the pupils via an online questionnaire we asked them to complete. And also the teacher was very committed and gave us useful remarks that helped us to improve. And this was one of the most important lessons learned. It is always a very strange situation to present something online, because most of the time, like today's conference, you don't see the audience, you don't get a feeling whether they're interested, are they even listening, especially with pupils, you never know. So although a questionnaire is not the best way to get a reaction, we figured out in the end it's more or less the only possible way we have to get any feedback at all. In the following month, after this initial test, we communicated this online research training to schools and tell them we could provide them with information literacy trainings, although the library was still not working as normal. And it proved to be quite a success. We had until today 67 trainings because this format was very adaptive. You have to know, in Hamburg, according to the level of the pandemic, the ways pupils were taught varied, from being all in the same classroom, like during this initial training, followed by classes being split in 2 groups, so there wouldn't be too many people in one room at the same time, and one half is staying in the classroom, the other one is staying at home, to completely remote lessons where all the students are stay at home. And in all these scenarios, we were able to provide them with some information literacy competencies. To be honest, it felt really, really good, because as I told you on site, there was this supermarket feeling. And with these trainings, we had some real librarians' tasks to do. As we couldn't do the trainings with the initial group of 3 people, we initiated a training for our colleagues, who you can see in the picture below, so they could join us and support even more classes over the city. This worked quite well, and although we can offer our normal information literacy tours since September, again, the teachers are still interested in the digital format, so we decided to continue to offer both from now on. So this is maybe even something that might outlive the pandemic. We focused first on the older pupils, because we knew they may have easier access to devices, and they may be used to do online classes at this point. But in December 2020, January 21, the hope of going back to normal in the next couple of weeks faded, and we realized it would be probably take a while until anything could take place in the library again. So we had to think about what we would do for the younger children. This was way more difficult because the younger the children, the more important is an interaction with them. I guess you all agree that if you're doing, for example, a picture book cinema with 3-year-old children, it's so important to get them involved with questions, especially if they are not used to books, or maybe in our case, German is only their second language. You need to interact with them. And so again, we got in touch with institutions, in this case, primary schools or kindergarten groups, and we tried to figure out how to offer them a remote event. In this case, the obstacles were not only the technical part. Most of the primary schools actually have an interactive whiteboard, but as we're talking about things like showing picture book cinemas, we had also consider the copyright and what we're allowed to do online and what not. So there was actually the need to talk to publishers to get their agreement to do those picture book cinemas. In the end, we tried to do 2 different approaches. For example, actually presenting a picture book cinema to a kindergarten group via Zoom, again via Zoom. You have to imagine the children sitting in front of a laptop, so they could see not only the pictures, but also they could interact via the microphone and the camera. This only did work for small groups, but nevertheless, it was one thing we could do. And to add something special, we offered them material to do craft projects matching with the stories, to do this in the kindergarten. So it would not just be sitting in front of a laptop and listening to the story. Or the other picture on the left, this is a colleague in another library branch in Hamburg. He recorded a guided tour through his library for primary schools, and told them everything they needed to know in around about 3 minutes. And after this, they also added a picture book cinema or a little chat on Zoom where the pupils could ask questions or they could talk about the library. It kind of worked, and the teachers were grateful for those opportunities. And we even tried to do some picture book cinemas in the afternoon for everyone, not just for groups, classes. But I think it is good that we are finally starting to do these events in the library again, even though it is still complicated. There are still restrictions in place, like a limited number of people. But this online events for the younger children, it was a solution for that moment, but definitely not perfect. So the last thing I wanted to share with you after these experiences are the long-term impacts of the pandemic. The public libraries in Hamburg were only closed for a short time in spring 2020. It was very interesting to experience that we were considered as key workers during the pandemic, and the libraries were seen as an essential service for the community because we weren't closed again during the second or third lockdown. I lost count in the last winter. Everything else was closed. The schools were closed again. The museums were closed, theaters, everything like sports places were closed. But we stayed open because apparently we are key workers and very, very important. So this was interesting to know, and the readers coming to us, they were so happy we were still open, and it was lovely to know we played such a role in their lives. The pandemic is not over, and although some things are quite normal or seem quite normal, those restrictions still in place have an impact on how we operate as a library today. A good example is before the pandemic, we had around about 40 kindergarten groups a month who would visit us without anything planned, just looking at books, discovering stories together, experiencing the library. It wasn't necessary for them to register for this. They just walked through our doors. Now we can only allow one group at the same time in the children's section. And in that time, this part of the library is not accessible for anyone else. That means, first of all, it is not possible for approximately half of the groups that came before to visit the library and all, and because the slot is already taken. And second of all, if a family comes to visit at the same time in the morning as a registered kindergarten group, they'll either have to wait or come back later. It is not a very satisfying situation, but it is all we can do right now. Another thing we noticed is that actually fewer children from low-income families have library cards nowadays. As we offer free cards to them, this is obvious in our statistics. We have proof of this, it's not just a feeling. And normally we reach most of them via our work with schools or kindergarten groups. And now these visits didn't take place like they used to for over 1.5 years. And unfortunately, it is not sure at all that we are going to be able to reach those lost age groups in the near future. But of course, we are going to try and thinking of ways how to connect with them again. And in the end, there are still some gaps in what we offer now, because we have lost a few volunteers who worked with children in our library. Either they have moved on in their life, which is a normal thing to happen, but because of the pandemic, we weren't able to look for a replacement, or they don't feel comfortable to return because they don't feel safe yet under the current circumstances. So this is also a part where we have to do a lot of work in the hope that someday in the next couple of months, we are going to have a real library again and not just this, well, substitute. This was a small insight into our library work in Hamburg. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to a discussion with all of you. I'm just going to close my presentation, so it may be a more personal way to talk to each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leonie. That was an absolutely fascinating insight into the work that you've been doing, and so much of it resonated with me. The picture of the tapes and the screens and the things that we had to do and how so unwelcoming that felt. And we were so relieved when we were told we could take that down. And actually, one of the things that somebody said to us was coming into the library used to scare me, because it just felt like I shouldn't be there because of all these barriers and tapes and things. So yeah, it didn't feel like a place we wanted it to be, did it? So but thank you so much for that. We have got a comment and a question, so I'll go to the first question. So from Laura, she says she loves this type of collaborative working with schools. Can I ask if you charge for the training service? She's saying that they have an educational library service wing and they have to generate their own funding, so that they have to charge schools for any activity during school time. And it sometimes puts a block on joint working. That's a really interesting comment, so I'd be interested to hear too. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I'm really sorry that you have to charge schools for those things, because we do this for free. We rarely charge for anything in the library. It's only when we have like readings for adults. But other things are provided for by the city. We are funded by the city completely, and more or less. We have library fees, of course, but we offer our services for the schools for free, and this works quite well. It's actually, we have a contract with the school authorities for some age groups. So it's not only that they can come to us for free, but they're obliged to come to us at some years. So this is only, well, we have to be there for the schools too. So it's a two-way thing. And yes, I didn't know that anyone was obliged to charge schools.
Yes,
for our
actually,
service.
yes, Laura, I think as well, in our service, we have a schools library service that does charge people, just charge schools for their services. So
we can do school visits for free. That's not a problem. But if we're doing any sort of project work like training with schools, we would have to charge for that. And it's unless it's after school hours, we can do it after school hours. But it's harder to get that relationship built up when everything you're doing with the school is out of school hours. Summer reading challenge, not a problem. School visits, not a problem. But anything like training, that would cause a bit of an issue, I think.
Okay, I didn't know this because well, in Hamburg, providing information literacy for students is actually something which is part of the work we have to do working with schools. Yes. So
yeah,
interesting to learn about that. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Laura. There's also a really lovely comment in the chat from Mario, who says the online research training service is truly wonderful, and I believe it could truly be a service to continue to be adopted even when the pandemic period is over. He says congratulations, Leonie. I mean, I wondered how much you were thinking about how your services might be a mixture of physical and digital, or are you wanting to really concentrate back on the physical aspect of things?
That's a very interesting question, because it's something that's quite important right now as we get to go back to the physical events, and we don't have so much time, resources to do both at the same time. So now we're trying to, because we had a full schedule before the pandemic. So now we try to squeeze in our digital events because they're asked for and they're helpful and they do work. We just have to figure out a way how to do these things next to the things we also want to do. So it's more work in the end.
It is. It's really hard, isn't it, Leonie,
yes.
to balance the two, because we want to do the same. Some of the things you said about the digital sessions online, I think every library has put those kind of sessions on where they can, and we've reached audiences around the world.
Yes.
I don't know whether you think the same, that it does have its value, but then when you reintroducing your physical services, it's really hard to maintain that because we haven't got the capacity.
Yes. Fortunately for the younger children, the preference is clearly to be on site. They want to have this library experience. For the older pupils, it's well, they had that already, and now it's really focusing on how to prepare papers, how to prepare presentations, how do I get valuable information for that. And yes, it's this could be done digital. Actually, it's maybe easier to do it online because the school is equipped with everything they need to do the exercises, and we just don't have like a computer for everyone. They have to share. So it might be, as I said, outlive the pandemic, this online research training, and might be a good idea in the end. And maybe, why haven't we thought about this before?
Yes, it has made us think very differently, hasn't it?
Yes,
absolutely. There's a comment from Thomas in the chat, which probably I can answer, but he's put in the UK context, he's always found it strange to have charges for school library services to schools, and he said as this always been the case, and I can tell you, Thomas, that very many years ago, as a school leaver of 16, I started out working for a school library service, and it was a free service, and I think some authorities are probably, I don't know, but I would imagine some still provide a lot of their services for free. Obviously, we're the same in that, as Laura mentioned earlier, that we have children's class visits and that kind of thing, which we wouldn't charge for. But in terms of project material and that kind of, and bit of an add-on, then we do charge for it. So somewhere along the line, somebody decided that it needed charging for. But I think that that's a great shame. That I know that our offer to schools is not very well taken up because of the charges, because schools are fighting with their budgets, aren't they? So they've got reductions in budgets, and they have to spread their money the same. So yes, I think it is a shame, absolutely, and it's nice to hear, Leonie, that you don't charge for those services.
No.
Yeah, so I suppose I think what struck me as well was how much work you put into the research, and I don't know whether you may have said this, but how many schools take you up on that? Is it well? Are you being well used? Are you trying to obviously capacity wise? Do you feel that you're up to the limit now, or could you expand that?
With our online research training.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is a demand. We have like 5 to 10 online training classes every month still,
Mm-hmm.
Although the groups can come back into the library. And we had a training for colleagues to do this too, to help us, because we couldn't cope with all of the training sessions. And we are still looking forward to get help from more colleagues, and as it is something that is, something that a lot of librarians really like to do, to explain those databases, because it's like a hidden treasure for pupils, and we like to help them discover this. I think we are going to, we haven't met our ends with this.
No.
So.
Yeah. Gossier has asked, what factors are you taking into consideration when evaluating whether an event should continue as digital or be physical?
We take a look whether people are still asking for it as a digital version. If no one is going to ask for this, for example, the online reference desk we offered during library closure, this was used a few times during the closure, but after that we still offered that because there were all still social distancing, don't come to the library for a long time, you couldn't expand really and look what might be interesting for you. But the people preferred to come nevertheless. So we stopped this service, and if there were no more teachers booking our online research training, well, we would stop it in the end, of course. And it's the same, for example, with the picture book cinemas for the younger children. The primary schools, they want to come into the library. They don't want the digital version, so we don't do this anymore. So, well, it's basically a question of demand.
Yes, and I think I agree there. I think we found that as well, that we would stop if people stopped attending, just as we would do before the pandemic. If we put on events and activities, it's sometimes trial and error, and thinking about what people want, and sometimes you don't get it right, and so you try for a while, and if it still doesn't take off. So I think that's exactly the same for us as well. Thank you for that, Gussie. That's a really interesting question. So Anna Margarida has asked, I thought that she's made, well, it's a statement really, I thought that under the UNESCO Manifesto on Libraries, services provided should be free of charge. We don't charge for those services in Portugal as well. That's a really interesting discussion topic. So of course our public libraries are statutory services, and we don't charge for the majority of things we offer there. But I think the school library service, that is something that people have tended to think that they can charge for. So definitely our statutory public library services, access to books, and in most cases for IT would be free of charge. Thomas has asked, was the online service staffed during lockdown?
I'm but sorry, I don't really get that question.
So when so I suppose for what happened for us when we first went into lockdown, nearly everything shut down, and we had to think of ways to then deliver our services. So I suppose, was there a point when online services weren't staffed during any period of lockdown? Were staff working from home, for example, and so that didn't make any difference?
No, we were working in the library most of the time. We were accessible via phone and email and everything. So we were there. Actually, also in the library, only a few colleagues worked from home, and
okay.
Because, well, there are regulations in Germany. It's not so easy. So just to decide everyone can work from home or anything like this. So yes. It was an interesting time.
Yes, and I think for so many, I think the reason the question is pertinent, particularly in the UK, for so many, our services did just close. We were taught to go home and work from home, and I remember the very first day of lockdown thinking, what do we do now then? So we got a laptop out to all our staff, and they did quickly adapt and offer services online, and we made many phone calls, welfare calls through our laptops to our older people. So we did take at one point all our services away, from physical spaces, and took our staff away as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a few comments coming in the chat. Laura has said we've done some wonderful free activities for children. Zoom zoos have been particularly popular, but these are provided out of school hours. This is only services to schools that are charged for, and all libraries are open for everyone. So she's just answered the previous question. So most public library offer is still free. From John. Leonie, first of all, he said he loves the smiley pins on your notice board, and I do too. I think your remote services are really interesting and could be a way forward for remote communities and areas where there is a hard winter weather, where travel becomes difficult, and useful backup for any library experiencing disruption to the library through building works, etc. So yes, it doesn't necessarily just have to be during the pandemic. Have you thought about that?
Actually, we already had a few classes from out of town. Well, there is a train connection, but still it's easier for them. And also Hamburg is a big city. So to get to our main library in the middle of the city, where most of the information literacy trainings are taking place, it could take you, well, half an hour maybe. And putting this into a school day can be difficult. So in the end, it's not, not only under special circumstances, this could be something useful because we can adapt easily to the timetable in the school, because no one has to travel somewhere. And well, we are looking forward to do this. Also, colleagues who are working in really small library branches, they can participate in this because they don't need to have the space to accommodate a whole group of people. And yes, it's we are quite happy with having developed this.
Yes, and I think it is really interesting that I hope that people, lots of library services throughout the world will be thinking about, actually we can do this, and we don't have to do it just in a pandemic. And not that we get many snow days where we can't actually travel in England, but there are things that happen that do disrupt our services, and it's really interesting to hear that, and to think about that we could do that too. Laura's commented, we also don't have overdue fees on any cards for children aged 0 to 16. That was a decision made in response to the pandemic. In the UK, as well. A lot of our authorities, mine included, have decided not to charge fines anymore. We've thought about our real vulnerable customers and how that might put people off using libraries. And it takes a brave authority to do that, because obviously it's an income target and it means that you don't get as much money in. But you know, gradually, week on week, we see people, authorities joining this trend not to charge fines. And I wonder if that's something you've ever thought about. Do you charge children fines?
For returning books too late? Or
Yes,
yes, we do. We stopped doing this during the pandemic for a couple of weeks, especially during the last winter, because we were open and you could come into the library, but we didn't want too much people because there were still restrictions in place. We have a limited number we could let enter in the library. So we said, well, if you can't give the books back, you won't get fines during this and this period. But now we are back on this, so this isn't free anymore. But I totally get the idea why this is, especially for the vulnerable clients, a bit difficult.
Yes. And I do think, you know, for us, we've really found that it's been a really good thing to do, and our funders and our councillors, elected members, have been really supportive of that. So yes, it is a trend. I just wanted to ask you, well, actually, I just wanted to make a comment really, because I was really interested to hear how you said that your library staff were now seen as key workers. That happened to us as well. So, you know, when people started saying how much they missed libraries and that they needed something to read, and what were we going to do about it, you know, we thought of all sorts of things. So we put books in community venues. Some of the books that we may have sent off to charities that weren't being used anymore, we just took to community venues. We put them in shops, we put them all over the place, just so people could read. A lot of my library staff were redeployed into other areas of work, so they helped in testing centres and vaccination centres and that kind of thing. And I think it's really raised the profile of library staff, where people thought they knew what we did. You know, being in the library and stamping books and that kind of thing. And they've really realised the skills and the talents that our library staff have. And I was really pleased when you said that. And I don't know whether you want to expand a bit more on that. It's been a really good thing, hasn't it, that our staff are now recognised as key workers.
Yes, absolutely. It was well, it was not only politics, but also some medias and also well, the readers who came back into the library. And it was like, still some of them say, I'm so glad you're still here. So because, well, there is a new wave of rising numbers with COVID, and everyone is a bit scared. Are you still open? But yes, we are going to be still open, and I sincerely don't think we are going to be shut down again, because everyone realized how important it is to have a place to go. I remember between Christmas and New Year's Eve, everything was closed. The children were on holidays, and the parents didn't have any place to go with them. So they came to the library and they had big bags of books and games and everything they took home with them, because they were kind of desperate. Even the shops were closed for most of the time. And so this was really a place to get something to live for.
Yes, I remember the day before the Saturday before lockdown, we all got locked down and sent home on a Monday. And the Saturday when we'd already advertised the fact that libraries were going to be closed, the amount of people who came in, and we just allowed them to take as many books home as they wanted. And there were families filling carrier bags with books to take home, and it was just so heartwarming. But the other side of it was heartbreaking. So and it just shows how important that libraries are to people, doesn't it? So yeah, we too felt that as well. Thomas has said in Camden we had a fines amnesty in summer, which just ended for people with fines which predated lockdown. Okay, so I wonder if any other authorities have done that. So if anybody does want to put anything in the chat there about whether they've done that. I think I've heard one or two have had fines amnesties. And what we did during lockdown was we just renewed people's books, so they never became overdue. Even though we didn't charge fines, people were, funnily enough, people feel that sense of civic responsibility, and they were really worried. We got a phone call saying, my library books are due back and you're not open, and what do I do? And we just said, just keep them, it's fine, you know. So people were worried about that. So I think one or two libraries probably did that, but that's a really interesting thing. Thomas, I don't know, did you find that that was really welcomed? I expect you did. And did you think that that encouraged people to use the library more? I don't know whether you want to come in, Thomas.
Hello, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it had some effect. It brought some people back, but it probably, yeah, it at the back of my mind, I rather thought more people would take it, you know, would come back, you know. But it certainly, you know, it was sort of it was regarded as a sort of a welcome back present, you know, welcome back from Camden. But I think it's just this is it's the old problem, the old chestnut. You know, you find it hard to reach the people you're trying to get to. Do you know what I mean? It's
yes, I do.
A lot of people, you know, they may have moved address, they may have changed address, they may have, you know, they may have forgotten about these books, so until they try and use their ticket again somewhere, you know.
Yes, and you hear lovely stories, don't you, from people who have done this sort of thing, from library services that have done this sort of thing, where they get a book coming back that's like been out since 1945 or something.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Did you experience anything of that?
Yeah, we did indeed. Yeah, we did indeed. I got quite. I mean, I'd be interested in it. We had a DVD, I think. Heimat. It was a television program years and years ago, and I saw that in a box. Had been, I'm not quite sure what happened, but it had been overdue. You know, it was one of these what we call box sets, wasn't it? Sort of had but unfortunately, Leonie, it wasn't in good condition. So again, it's the whole thing about some people question whether or not amnesties are worthwhile because the material you get back is not in great condition. You usually have to withdraw it, etc. But at least what we say to people is you don't have this big bill hanging over you, you know, because it's, you know, you have a clean sheet, and as far as you're concerned, you follow the regulations, you know. So, but my little story about being locked down, if I can.
Yes, please do.
We were all, you know, it was a Saturday, wasn't it? The Saturday, in, you know, the 23rd of March. We will never forget it because, I mean, it was something that we were expecting. You know, it was something that was, you know, obviously going on to happen. And if you remember, a week before, we weren't supposed to go to pubs anymore, and which was a source of a lot of mourning. But then it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In fact, the library I was in, and we were there, and there was a PA announcement because it's a big building. Suddenly, that the library is closing, and we had to go. And I met this lady walking. We were leaving the main entrance, locking the door, and I met this lady coming in, and she was she obviously didn't know what had happened. She wasn't really aware. She wanted to return a book. She wanted to return this book. And we were trying to explain to her that everything had shut down. And eventually I showed her my name, I showed her my staff pass, and I said, I look after it for you.
Oh,
I look after it for you, you know, kind of. And if there's any problems, just tell them you gave it to me or something like that, you know.
yeah.
And
yeah.
that was happy. But I'm, you know, as I say, really, I thought it's so. I was really, I found it really touched, because she may not have been aware how serious a situation we were in, but she wanted to get her book back, and she didn't want any fines.
Yeah, we found that, and the worry, and people not, well, none of us understood what was going to happen, did we, on that day? No. I am sure that lots of people on this call have a very vivid memory of the day that we all locked down. And that might be different times in different countries, but you know, I'm sure that that's a real vivid memory. Thank you for that, Thomas. And you know, it does bring back lots of really strange memories, and we've lived through such a strange time. Are there, so Leonie, thank you. Are there any other questions, last minute comments? We've still got a little bit of time for any more questions for Leonie, or any, if anybody wants to come in and say anything, please do. I'll just give you a minute or two just in case there is anybody else. Okay, it seems that we are coming to an end, and I just wanted to say thank you so much, Leonie. That was really, really interesting, and you know, it just shows how I think the fantastic discussions we've had, and the comments and the questions, just shows how we're all very similar, and we've all been through a very similar thing that will stay with us, won't it, for the rest of our lives. John, do you want to come back in finally, or? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll start the video. Yes. Thank you so much, Carol. I found both yours and Leonie's presentation talks, you know, really valuable and interesting. And I think the only thing I wanted to, I don't know whether you were going to say this, but for people who can join us next week, were you going to mention this in your summing up?
Yes, but you please do. That's absolutely fine.
Okay. Well, it's just, we have. If you haven't read the blurb, there's some great speakers coming to follow on from Leonie and Carol, and we have Julien Maréchal from the Petit Bibliothèque Ronde in France. I think that's in Paris, in the outskirts of Paris.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And he's going to talk about an online survey devoted to the impact of the health crisis on libraries. We also have Mario Coffa, who's actually in the seminar today, and Mario comes from the University of Perugia, and he's going to talk about examine the consequences that COVID-19 pandemic has had on libraries in Italy, particularly from the view of the provision of services and the use of facilities. And then last but not least, Jan Brodowski from Krakow Library in Poland. And I think this is going to be very fascinating to understand. Krakow Library didn't close throughout the lockdowns in Poland. And he's got some interesting stories, I think, about the projects that they started and used at that time. So just a brief overview. Okay.
That's great. Thank you, John. That's really good. And Gossier has put in the chat the link to register for the 10th and the 17th if you haven't done already. So I think it's just for me to kind of say what an interesting discussion, and you know, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I certainly enjoyed Leonie's. It was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for giving up your time Leonie, to do that for us, and just to thank everybody who's commented, asked a question, or just joined. I hope that you've really enjoyed it. I certainly have. There's some comments coming through about how great it was. So just to say thank you very much, everybody. And John, is there anything else? Is there something I've missed, or is that okay?
Just to say that the presentations, this is being recorded for us, and
Yes.
that we will make that available as soon as we can through the website. I think a link there, and also the presentation, the slideshows will be made available on the Eurolis WordPress site.
Thank you. And there's just a question about the Zoom invite, and they will arrive automatically into people's inboxes if you've registered. I'm so looking forward to the next 2 sessions, and hopefully you can join us then. And just thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Lynn.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.